Today, I got to talk to Billy White. I see why when I posted on Instagram that I was going to be doing an episode on the Surmlands 100, I now see why people got so excited to hear more from Billy. Such a good guy. Such a clearly loves the race that he's putting on. It's fun to hear about the differences between American and European running generally, and then even specifically how Swedish running differs from the average European race. And as Americans, we think about UTMB as the European race, but man, there's so many races, and I'm just starting to scratch the surface of learning about it myself, and I'm stoked to do these conversations. Billy is not only a runner, not only is he a race director, but he's also a chef and a Michelin star restaurants, which is a pretty cool thing to learn. I knew that he was renowned. I knew that he had a book, but to learn that he spent some time in Noma in 2010, like when they were in their big push there in Copenhagen, was pretty cool. But at the end of the day, just a good guy to talk to. Clearly loves the sport. I think he's one of a great example of what makes this such a great sport on a relational level. It's nice when the people behind the sport, behind the race that you're running, are quality people, and he's really trying to put on a quality race, and it's obvious. I hope through the course of this episode I earn a follow from you. If not, please don't do it. But if you do and you want to hear more content like this, if you wouldn't mind, wherever you're listening to this, if you subscribe or follow or whatever the platform calls that, where you get notified every time we have a new episode. Really appreciate that. All right. Here's my new friend, Billy White. All right. This is, I don't even know what episode this is going to be, but I'm excited about it. I'm excited about all the episodes. This one in particular, because this is the first race I'm doing in Europe that's not UTMB. And UTMB is obviously what a lot of Americans know Europe for. And in our, I don't even have to put it negatively, just in our sort of fixation on our American West runs races or even our East Coast races, all that sort of stuff, that we don't really think about the deep dive into the ultra scene in Europe as being more than UTMB. And of course, it's mostly more than UTMB. It's just, it's just not what we know. So today, in my endeavor to get to know some European ultras better, I've been following what I'm probably going to mispronounce, but I'm going to do my best, the Stormlands 100. And I'll be honest, I look for the same thing in new ultras that I look for in wine. And that is, the label's got to be good. And if the label's not good, I'm not probably going to try what's on the inside of the bottle. And what I love about the Stormlands 100 is right out of the gates, the design is really good. And so that's what intrigued me about it. And so I started to look into the socials, and then started to engage with the person behind the socials. And then it turns out it's Billy White. And Billy White is someone who, when I said I was going to do this episode about the Stormlands 100, everyone was like, "Oh, you can talk to Billy? Billy's great." And so I'm like, "Oh, I can't wait. I can't wait to get to know him. He's a former chef. He's in my world. Restaurants and turned ultra running." And so without any further ado, I'd like to introduce my new friend that we've known for each other for almost 2 minutes now, Billy White. Welcome, Billy.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're here. I when I announced you, it was fun to have the people reach out and say, "Oh, cool, we can't wait to hear, the background story in this race." We followed Billy. One guy had reached out. He's ran your race before, one of the distances. And so it's going to be fun to hear about it. How about just out of the gates here? Because we talk about in this season, the course being the hero. Can you tell us a little bit about where the race is, and if I'm pronouncing Stormlands correctly and all of
It's
that?
pretty good.
Can you just kind of give us the high level?
Yeah, absolutely. Pretty good pronunciation, I have to say. I'm impressed. So we're based in a region of Sweden called Sörmland, which is basically, if you look at the map, it's the region south of Stockholm. So we're about a third of the way up. So it's a fairly temperate climate, a lot of forest, a lot of farmlands, rolling hills rather than anything spectacularly mountainous. But but a lot of forest and a lot of lakes. So our like 100-mile race that goes from the third, or is it the fourth biggest lake in Sweden, the shores of Mälaren, and you run across the region all the way to the Baltic Sea, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
And is this your home territory? Is this where you're from?
I'm from England. I'm from York in
Oh,
England. So
okay.
but
I don't
I've
ever want
lived
to
in
make a
Sweden.
presumption on an accent because I get accents wrong all the time. So I just assumed this was a Swedish accent. But because the way that you're saying Stormland, so do you speak Swedish fluently?
Yeah, yeah. I've
Okay,
lived here
good.
for, I think, 13, 14 years now. So I'm
Okay.
pretty, I mean, my Swedish is not perfect. And the reason why the website's completely in English is because my written Swedish is atrocious. So
Yeah,
I
those
pretend,
are hard languages.
yeah, absolutely. I pretend it's because we're an international race and we have a lot of runners from different countries, but it's mainly my Swedish writing is so bad.
Yeah. So what brought you to that area? Where did your love for that area come from? Was it being a chef and coming to that area to cook?
Yeah, yeah. Initially, I was working in London and I wanted to move. At the time, there was a lot happening in the Scandinavian food scene, so I traveled
Absolutely.
around a little bit in Denmark and in Sweden. And when I was in Sweden, I met my wife, and yeah, that
Okay.
a long time ago brought me to Stockholm, and then we moved to this region relatively recently, just last year. But we've had a little
Okay.
cabin in this area, basically what do you say? Like maybe 200 yards from the start of the 100 miles is our
Oh man.
small cabin, and we live
Nice.
now maybe like 10 miles away from the finish area. So it's a pretty,
Oh, that's awesome.
yeah.
Do you have a dual citizenship, or are you what is your situation like in Sweden?
I have dual citizenship post Brexit.
Okay.
I I
Oh, okay.
immediately claimed citizenship in Sweden.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice. So, and Sweden's EU, it's the Schengen area,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's deeply connected with all of the other,
yeah,
other
absolutely.
than the UK.
Yeah, exactly. Apart from that little island.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so your citizenship's there. Sound pleased to leave after Brexit. What is it about Sweden for you? Well, I mean, even before why doing the race there? I mean, maybe that's even a business question as much as a passion question. But what is it about that area that you love? Obviously, the culinary movement. I think of Copenhagen first off as an American. We think of Noma and all of those great restaurants. Was Sweden having a similar movement? Up near Stockholm and all of that was
Yeah,
happening in Copenhagen.
absolutely. So I went over to, I was spent a little bit of time in the kitchens at Noma.
Did
Um,
you really?
yeah, yeah,
Oh my
briefly. I was
gosh.
working at a restaurant called St. John in London at the time, which was really
Okay.
well regarded. And
Okay.
when and then that interest in Scandinavian food happened. I went to Noma briefly and a restaurant in Stockholm called Mattias Dahlgren, which was
Oh man.
they're a contemporary. And then after moving here, I ended up working in the north of Sweden at a restaurant called Färviken or Faviken.
Okay.
Yeah, which
So by comparison, ultra running is really easy compared to working in those kitchens. That's
the
crazy.
I think those like the 16-hour days on your feet in the kitchens
Hmm.
sort of they translate pretty well to being an
I
ultra
believe it.
runner. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So are you totally out of the kitchen at this point, or
I actually
are you
work
doing
hard.
both?
I work part time at a little organic farm slash cafe in this region, so just 30 minutes from where I live. It's super nice.
Okay.
Like we have an organic bakery and cook a lot
Wow.
of the vegetables from our garden. They have cows and sheep. It's like it's
Oh man.
super nice, like really high quality produce, but like cafe and simple lunch food, but really like a really high
Yeah.
standard, but not it's
And what?
no there's no tweezers, there's no screaming in the kitchen.
Yeah, or like the espuma stuff. Yeah, like there's no like
Yeah,
what do they call that? Molecular or
yeah,
gastronomy or something like
yeah.
that.
No molecular gastronomy going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your day in and day out role there?
So I head up the kitchen, but in a sort of part-time capacity. So menu
Okay.
writing, planning schedules, sort of going through things with the guys. We have a really good team, so it's pretty nice. So yeah, so
Yeah.
heading up the kitchen from a part-time position, which is kind of strange, but it works pretty nice in this place.
Yeah. So you leaving that world, did ultra running pull you from that world, or did burnout cause you to leave that world? What was your transition out of like the Michelin star restaurant?
was basically a little bit of a family. I've got two young
Okay.
kids,
Oh, okay.
and it's not so well, not that young, a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old. So it's
Okay.
not super compatible. So I think about it
Yeah.
must have been about 10 years ago. I stepped away from restaurants and
Okay.
was running a similar place in Stockholm, like an organic cafe nursery on the outskirts of Stockholm.
Okay.
But whilst doing that, I was asked to write a book on trail running and food, which I did.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Okay.
that was in
I saw that.
2019, and from then I got asked quite regularly if I would be keen to do events, and the more events led to less time in the kitchen, and
Yeah.
so I've been working a little bit. So I finished that role 2 years ago, and
Okay.
I've been doing a lot of running, outdoor cooking related events
Oh,
up
that's
until
awesome.
fairly recently when I just started at this role now, which is
Okay.
yeah, which is kind of nice. It's nice to be back in the kitchen on like a daily basis. I think that doing events and working on your own is it's pretty heavy going. Like it
Yeah.
demands a lot mentally.
Absolutely. That's kind of been my life. That the joke is, the last time that I had a job, last time I had a boss, I was working at Chick-fil-A,
Okay.
which is an American fast food, and this was like the late '90s. Like I had a few other things here and there, but by and large, the thing that sometimes I would trade for hustling, which like to make money without a boss and doing it on my own through whatever business that is. I mean, the trade off is freedom, but sometimes, man, it'd be nice to just punch in and
Yeah.
you know have a team and have someone telling you what to do. Like some days I really romanticize that, but I can see you having seasons, especially of the intensity of the things that you had done, wanting to bounce in and out of that and maybe go back into the kitchen now with a more reasonable pace so you can actually enjoy the parts that you enjoy and
Yeah,
not enjoy the other parts.
absolutely. Absolutely.
And this sounds a lot like ultra running. I mean, it feels like we're talking about ultra running the same. You could have those crazy seasons of intensity, and then all of a sudden, you're off for 18 months and putting on some weight and eating too much and drinking too much.
Yeah. Oh, happens.
So tell me about the Stormlands. So say it slowly. I just want to get it right. Sorm or
Yeah.
Serm?
Now I
Serm.
have to think. Sermlands.
Sermlands. Okay.
Yeah. So
Is
the
it the
region
O
is
that has a line through it?
O with two dots over the
Two
top,
dots.
which is
Okay.
basically Norwegian and Danish has the line through it, and Swedish has the two dots.
Has the two dots. Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of like Malmo. I don't know if I'm saying
Yeah.
that right. Does that have the two dots
Exactly.
over the O? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did you start this race from day one? Is this your baby, or did you inherit it? Did you buy it? Tell me about that.
No, we started it, so we're only in our third year. So this year coming up in September is our third year.
Okay.
And maybe like 10 years ago when we bought the cabin out in this area, I was running a lot in the area, and the more I got to know the area, the more it was like this region needs a point-to-point 100-miler.
Oh,
And
yeah.
Sweden in general, or I think maybe the world in general, needs more point-to-point 100-milers.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's
So
hard to
then,
do, but it's awesome.
yeah, absolutely. So I waited for some years, but nobody else seemed to be keen to put on the race. So with a friend of mine,
Yeah.
Petter, we started it in 2022. So yeah, pretty recently.
Wow. And I think I understood correctly, but like last year, it seems like you doubled the number of runners you had the year before. But
150% growth we had from year one to year two.
okay. And what are you looking at going into year 3? I mean, it's early in registrations, right? But
Yeah, I think if we can increase 50% this year, I would be super happy.
mm-hmm.
And I think we would maybe be able to pull it off. Last year was, I think, from the runner's perspective, everything was fine, but from an organizational perspective,
Yeah,
150% growth was
your
insane.
hair's on fire. Yep, your
Yeah,
hair's on fire. I mean,
absolutely.
you're back in the kitchen. I think you're uniquely positioned for stressful growth. So
Yeah,
long as you pace yourself appropriately, you do the intense stressful growth, and then you sit back and relax. And maybe the European lifestyle maybe the Swedish lifestyle will allow for a little bit more relaxation compared to the American lifestyle? Because we
Yeah,
finish a race
possibly.
and we're marketing the next day for next year.
Yeah.
So
No, so I think it was fun. Year two was great, but it did take a little bit of reflection afterwards of like, and a few
yeah,
deep breaths of like, okay, how are we going to improve? How are we going to make
yeah,
it less? I think from the, like I say, from the runner's perspective, I was super happy. Of course, there's issues, and of course, there's ways we want to improve it.
yes,
We want to improve
absolutely,
year on year, but certainly from an organization perspective, it's a big focus this year.
yeah. And so this year, if you hit, I don't even want to say your goals, but if you hit where you think it's going, what would that number be?
I think we've got a few different distances running on the same day. So
Okay.
if we could have from 100 miles to like a 2 kilometer kids race.
Oh,
So if we can have 800 runners in total over so we have the 100
that's
miles,
awesome.
100 kilometers, 55 kilometers, and a half marathon plus the kids race. All running on the same course. So we drop
Yeah.
runners off at different spaces along the way. So, and try and time it so everybody comes within at least the heavy intensity period is within over a period of a couple of hours. And then, of course, the first 100-mile runner compared to the last 100-mile runner is maybe like 15 hours between. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Well, who in a European race, in a Swedish race, are you getting in America? We get permits, and that's why American races aren't that big. American trail races, like Western states, can't be more than 320-ish
yeah.
people, or Hard Rock can't be more than 120-ish. Because in America, our forestry, all of that, we have severe limitations. So we could never have the 10,000 person race, or even
No.
it's really hard to do 1,000 person race outside of Arizona. I think Aravaipa, and they're able to do these large races. Are you getting permits? What's it like there? What are you
Yeah,
working with? What are your
absolutely.
barriers?
So we need to get permits, inform landowners, like go through all the hoops and dot the I's and things. But because it's so broken up and almost the whole race is on pre-existing trails
Okay.
and gravel roads. So and it's intense. It's the most intense period is the last like 50K. So the 100-mile race, we aim for maybe if we can get 100 runners this year, I'm super happy.
Yeah.
100 runners also for the 100K, and then it gets more intense as the course continues. So
Yeah.
and like the nature reserve, I think we run through maybe I think like 16 different nature reserves along the course, 3 different
Wow.
no, 4 different municipalities, and I think there's 120 landowners that we need to take contact with. So it's
Well, in perspective, we kind of glazed over, but maybe we should talk about it for a minute. The reason that point to point races are so hard. I mean, a big loop, you're still doing 100 miles if you do a big loop like the No Business 100 or something like that. But that point to point, because the number of municipalities that you're going through, and gosh, think about the number of families, farmlands, all that sort of stuff. The point to point, rather than an out and back or something like that, that's a major commitment.
it's a
So
2-hour
good job.
drive. A 2-hour drive to get to the start from the finish. So it's pretty intense. Yeah.
Have you run an ultra in America?
No, never. I would love
Okay.
to, but no, I haven't.
Yeah, no, I'm just curious, like in terms of comparison, what crews and everything are like. Like, so, I mean, when we move to Europe this summer, I'm excited to go see a bunch of ultras. I really am hoping to come up and at the very least just hang out
Yeah,
at yours.
absolutely.
But the culture is like, that you got your crew that's kind of following you the whole way. And I've been to UTMB before, and it's severely limited as to where you can actually go in. Do you have limitations on where a crew and fans can come in and just watch the race? Like what how are your hands tied on that, or like what's that experience like?
Basically, I think we've got on the long course we have 14 aid stations, and I think that
Okay.
maybe 10 of them we allow crew and
Oh, wow.
spectators. There's a couple that are in slightly sensitive areas, and especially when they're running through the night, we don't want people like hanging around, and support crews with RVs and things heading there in the evening. But generally, we try and, like, as we're running through towns, we've got like a sports centre that's open through the evening, and we've got the half marathons has a start at a brewery in the nearest town to the finish. So we try and, like, that's also coming from the restaurant business. We try and have, like, the first aid station on the 100 miles is at a restaurant, and then after that, that's at a farm with a producer, Nicholas, who I know really well, and then we have the sports center and the brewery. So we try and, like, piece together.
Gosh. So I don't want to glaze over that, because that's extremely special. I don't know of any. I mean, maybe there's a place in America where you could go through that, but are they going into these establishments, or are these establishments owning the aid stations? Like, what's that relationship like?
They're basically going in. So this year will be the first one where we're using a new restaurant, and they will have tables set up outside. So that's
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, taking care of the 100-mile runners. And then Nicholas, who has the drop bag station at on the 100 miles, which is also the start of the 100K, you go into his farm. So like the aid station's in the barn, and we've got a chef friend of mine, Robert, who's cooking food for the guys. And then in the brewery, you stop off in they have like an outside serving. So you stop off at the brewery, and they've plenty of places to stay, like to hang around and have a beer and a bite to eat if you're a spectator. So it's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh, that's great. And this is where we have some crossover. I was never in the kitchen, but I was always the partner. We opened 13 restaurants, and I was always the partner that was responsible for fundraising and then branding out front. I get things off the ground. I'm an asset to get things off the ground, then I'm a liability. But even before that, my wife was a food writer. She was in the food industry for a long time. And what I love about this is that we've always tried to do this too. And we're still trying to get our feet under us for our race here. Cause I want restaurants to, come own the aid station. So like local restaurants, but you're able to send them in there, and then the crews can eat there. So what I'm hearing as usually the financial partner in a restaurant is like, wow, what an opportunity to have a great day of sales, introduce ourselves to a bunch of new people. But also this is your background. Like, this world, like, that if you can structure it correctly, this is a huge win for local businesses.
Yeah, I think so. And that's kind of the goal with the race, is like to lift this whole region, because it's a little bit, this region kind of lives in the shadow of some of the more famous tourist areas of Sweden. And also that it's so close to Stockholm. It's a little bit that it's too close for it to be exciting if you live in Stockholm to visit, because it's only an hour away. But it's also a little bit too far away for it to be you just pop there for an afternoon. So I think it gets overlooked quite a lot by a lot of Swedes. And for tourists, there's a lot happening. Like, there's a lot of small farms, a lot of like farm stores and farmers markets, great restaurants, beautiful landscape. So it feels like so I'm trying to get involved, getting as many restaurants and local businesses involved, as opposed to go into like the standard ultra race sponsors, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I think we maybe even think similarly about that. Like, I would love to, what we call like non-endemic sponsors, have non-ultra running brands be the sponsors. I think that's interesting. It's a different look, and it gets, some more, it just gives your whole race a different flair. We're not there yet, but
and it's difficult because you're sort of writing the rule book. We're definitely, like last year, there was definitely a handful of runners that were a bit disappointed with what they got at the aid stations, especially towards those that were a bit back at the back of the pack. And that's like, that killed me. And I guess that comes from the restaurant industry as well. Like, you can get 100 people saying, 100 people say it's great, and then one person were a little bit disappointed, and you're like, okay, full focus on that. And I think that's a good thing, but it's also it makes it a little bit more difficult, a little bit more stressful. But the goal is that we will have as many people as many people as possible walking away happy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that. That's the way I think too. Like I come at it from a hospitality standpoint. Like these people, just like when they're coming into your restaurant, the restaurant's not cheap. These races aren't cheap, and so they're trusting you with a lot of money. And we feel the pressure to like give them what they paid for, and then exceed expectations.
Yeah,
So they want to go tell their friends about it, and to exceed their expectations, just because we like to make people happy. Like that's one of the things that is hospitality industry. I think that's
yeah,
what one of the
absolutely.
unique things I'm seeing about your race, for sure. Tell me about what food then. It was fun to listen to my friend Amanda tell me about UTMB, that they had, regional cheese, local cheese at the aid stations, local charcuterie. What would be unique to an aid station in Sweden, food wise?
I mean, there's a lot of Swedish flavors that wouldn't necessarily work well at an aid station. I think if you're talking about like the fermented herrings that you see the YouTube videos of, for example, nobody wants surströmming at an aid station. But there's some
Yeah.
really good, like we've got some really good like bakers in the region. So like baked goods can be
Ooh, interesting.
delicious. Like some good cheeses, but not too strong. Um, One of the stations made like a really good like vegetable broth bouillon, kind of to try and give that like salty kick.
Yeah. Yeah, that
Let
sounds
me
good.
think, what else did we have? Now you've got me. But different cakes, different pastries, like trying to be a little bit more real food as opposed. Of course, we have candy and we've got the usual energy drinks or sport drinks. Um,
Yeah.
So it's and that's also a little bit work in progress, trying to work out what do people want, how do we keep as minimal wastage as possible. Like it's great with a huge buffet, but if people running the 100 miler want a bite of something and then just want to keep on moving, it's kind of difficult.
Yeah.
So it's finding that
Yeah.
balance. We're working
Yeah.
on it, and I think we're getting closer
Yeah.
to the right level. And then after the race, then we serve, like last year we served like a lamb stew with, and everybody got an alcohol-free beer at the finish line, and there was,
Oh, nice.
yeah, really nice vibes. So the intention is
Oh,
that
that's cool.
we try and get people to hang out afterwards and cheer the rest of the finishers on. We're
I
looking
love
at
that.
music and bands for this year, so
Nice.
hopefully there's like a real after party. So that should be
Yeah.
nice.
What's the 100 mile culture like in Sweden? Are there a lot of offerings, or are you blazing some new trail here?
There is quite many, considering the size of the country or the
Okay.
population of the country. I think, is there maybe like 10, 1200 miles, which doesn't sound a lot,
Okay.
but relative to how
Oh,
many,
yeah.
yeah.
How many people?
We've got the
Yeah.
biggest one is Kullamannen, which is in the UTMB group down.
Okay. I was going to ask if you had
That's
a UTMB. Yeah.
yeah, and that's down in the south of Sweden in November.
Okay.
Um, then there's several looped course 100 milers, and then yeah,
Okay.
a couple more point to point. There's there's definitely a good offering
Yeah.
relatively.
Nice.
I'd like to think we're doing something a little bit different. I'd like to think that
Yeah.
we're like a premium product, if you wanna say
Yeah.
so in the
I mean, here's what I
um
would say. I joked about it, like the design, like it is like wine. Like I buy label first if I don't know. Like my winemaking buddy, hates it about me, but it's the design matters a lot.
yeah,
And it's a real pleasant surprise when it actually also tastes good. And so I see, your design is what originally caught my eye. It was outside of the norm, not so much that exactly the style, just that it was so well designed, and in like graphic design, the logo, everything was so intentionally designed for such a young race. Communicated something to me that made me want to follow. And then I don't know if T.S. Weller did it, but it looks like T.S. Weller, an
yeah.
artist here in the United States. Did he do it?
He did the first logo, yeah.
Okay.
So I
That
can't.
I saw that Lord of Illustration. I was like, either that's T.S. Weller or that looks a lot like,
He
him.
did the first logo, which is like one of his like images with the swooshy. I sent him
Yeah.
some pictures from the course, and he did like an original piece of artwork, which I think
Yeah.
I have it up on the wall somewhere there.
Yeah.
But and then then, which was great and like it really eye catching. Then when I
Yes.
spoke to the guy who was printing our race T-shirts, he was like, "Do you know how many different colors this is? Do you know how much this is? Do you
Yeah.
know how much this is going to cost to
Yeah.
because all our T-shirts are hand screen printed, so it's like super nice organic cotton shirts."
Yeah.
Then the year after, I thought to keep things moving, there's a really good local trail runner. She lives in England, but she comes from here, she like her home ground, called
Okay.
Kajsa Holgersson, and I think she was the top placed Swede at TDS a couple of years ago, and she's
Oh
really
wow.
strong. And
Yeah.
she's a graphic designer, so I spoke to Kajsa and asked if she was interested in like doing year 2.
Nice.
So she did last year's, and then this year she's done the logo again. So we're trying to keep
Yeah.
things moving a little bit, but also have like Travis's artwork as like our like
Foundation.
go-to. Like this is
Yeah.
this is us, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. I think he set the, let's say, the brand off with a great foundation, and to see
Yeah.
then another artist be inspired by that, but it's another artist doing it. I like the colors of year 2 a lot. Like I love the runner, everything about it just was nice. And so then to hear
Yeah.
like that beneath, like inside the bottle of wine is actually good wine as well, as it seems like it would
Yeah.
bode well
Absolutely. I
for your
think that
future.
that's something that's important. Like everybody's seen a lot of these running race logos that's a silhouette of someone out there running up a hill, and it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want to wear that on a shirt. I want people to wear, not just wear their race T-shirts or their caps or whatever, any merch that we end up doing, feel that they need to wear it only at other races or if they're out training. It should be like, you should be proud to run any of the distances.
Absolutely.
And if you like the T-shirts, I picked up my daughter from school the other day, and one of the moms was wearing our race shirt from last year.
Oh, nice.
And it's super happy to see. Like,
yeah. I love that.
yeah.
Do you know off the top of your head, like in terms of like how many people are traveling from other countries versus are coming from Sweden?
I think last year we had 19 different nationalities running.
Oh gosh.
Wow. So considering it was year 2, it was really a really good turnout internationally. I mean, of course, a couple of them were based in Sweden, but there was definitely people that traveled from other countries of that, maybe like 50% of them. So there was people from Macau, wow. There was someone from Australia, there was a guy from San Francisco, I believe. So yeah, there was
wow.
Which is
How
really
do you
cool.
think they were finding out about it? Was it just through social media, or I mean, that's
I think so.
reach.
I mean, we haven't done any specific advertising really outside of Sweden. We've, of course, social media is global, but we haven't done any specific ads. And this is the first podcast I've done talking about the race. So
really,
yeah,
man, it goes back to like, if anyone's listening who's a race director, don't just get clip art for your logo. Like, my college degree was in branding, and I spent a lot of time with this professor in a one-on-one setting who made me read this like crazy thick textbook. And at the end, he said, you have to read the whole thing. And then at the end, he said, I want you to remember one thing: everything communicates something.
Yeah.
So you can't just assume that there's something that you've put out there that just, you could put it out there practically, because whatever font you choose, whatever color you choose, whatever shape you choose, whatever medium you choose, whatever moment, like when everything you do communicates something. And I feel like whether you're going about that intentionally or it's just a natural expression of who you are, it just feels like that's probably one of the superpowers of this race outside of execution. Like if year 1 sucked and you executed poorly, then you wouldn't have a great year 2. So obviously you directed the thing really well, but how you've presented yourself publicly matters a lot. And you've done a great job, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it's like, I'm a little bit upset that I can't run the race, because I made it as a race.
I was going to ask that.
Yeah, it's like maybe one day I will be able to, but it's like, this is what would be my ideal race. And like, maybe it's not for everybody, but maybe not everybody likes it, but I know that I really like it, and I have to be able to stand behind it, or else I'm going to get tired of it eventually. And how it will be in 10 years' time, I have no idea. But this is how it is year 3.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I 100% resonate with that, and I always think it's cool. Like when I see Jamil Curry and Aravaipa when he ran year one of Cocodona, he's out on the course of his races, and of course that's a very developed race organization. That's I don't know how like a decade, 2 decades in, so he could part from the day in and day out operations. But yeah, like if we're runners and we're starting our own races, highly likely that what we're putting together is something we'd rather run than have a walkie-talkie and a vest. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? So I get that. Can you give me some of the high points, like how much vert, and you could do it in meters or feet. I guess since you're also British, you probably can speak feet for us as well.
So it's 2,600 meters, which what does that translate to? About 7,500 feet, something like that, 8,000 feet maybe.
Okay,
So
nice.
it's not flat, but it's not
Yeah.
crazy. Like considering the landscape,
Yes.
like it's a lot of rolling hills, but it's technical. It's more like death by 1,000 cuts than it is these
Yeah.
big
Okay.
climbs. So I would
Okay.
say that 80% of the 100-mile runners that came to the finish line swore at me and told me that that was much harder than they thought it was going to be.
Hmm. And so is it technical in that it's like rocky and rooty and
Rocky and rooty, and then you get into some sort of routine with this, and then you'll come out on like an open gravel road, and then trying to get your legs going again
yeah.
is pretty tough. And then you'll do a few K or a couple of miles on that terrain, and then you'll go back into the forest, and then you've got to get used to. So it's this it's ever changing, which is I think is pretty good from a running perspective because it's not so monotonous. But getting your legs
Yeah.
to consistently change movement is
Yes.
pretty heavy. So, I mean, there's
Yeah.
no such thing as an easy 100-miler.
Right.
I think like the distance doesn't allow for it to be
Yeah.
easy. And I think this one
Absolutely.
probably lies somewhere in the middle. Like it's definitely not the
Yeah.
easiest, but it's certainly not one of these like crazy, crazy races.
Yeah. Is there a particular section of the course that people say that they like, or is there a particular section of the course that you just love more than the others? Like, what? Give me some of the highlights of different points of the course.
I mean, it's the start is the area where I've ran the most because that's where we've had our cabin. So the first
Yeah.
like 30K is just this really lovely, like gently rolling landscape. So you're running kind of along the banks of this lake, and then you've got this rolling gravel hills, and you've got a little bit. It's pretty open, and if the weather's nice, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But then that's probably maybe for the first 20 miles, I would say. Then you come into this like pretty heavy, really beautiful forest with like really dramatic cliffs and like
Huh.
really technical. And that's probably for the next 20 miles. So you've got this really, so you go from really runnable to like difficult technicality. And that's also when
Yeah.
it starts to become a little bit dark. And then it's also, I often joke with the runners because that's one of the few areas of Sweden where there's wolves. So you come into the
Oh.
dark. Yeah, so you come into the dark in this wolf populated area, which is, I think is great. The likelihood of seeing wolves is pretty slim, but it's kind of fun that they're there,
Right.
I think.
To know they're there. Yes.
Yeah. So that's the first half of the 100-mile is great. And then you, no, I think it's difficult. It's all of it's got its charm, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Sormlands is that the name of the region?
The region is Sörmland, exactly,
Oh,
Södermanland.
okay.
But
Okay.
Sörmland is what people is, yeah.
Okay. And if I were to go to these places, I would fly into Stockholm and just
Yeah.
like
Yeah, and then just
rent a car and go
there's a
down.
bus that goes, yeah, you rent a car or take the bus directly south. So it's pretty
Yeah.
easy to find.
Okay. And if someone were to sign up today, what's the entry cost?
The entry cost is 1,000, I think it's 1,850 kroner. So it's about $200, maybe something around
Oh,
that. Yeah.
I mean, I hear that. I mean, that's the average 100-miler in America. It's getting close to, $400 at this point. It's like
Really?
twice that.
I think
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think that
it's
we're the second most expensive 100-miler in Sweden.
oh,
I
okay.
think so. I
Yeah.
think and that so
I,
that yeah, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say we have a supply and demand thing. Back to what I said earlier, there's limited availability. Our permits for any race,
Yeah,
there's not one permit that's infinite, and the sport is growing so much, so
yeah,
it caps out. So if you want to, they'll do the lottery thing, or they'll just increase the price. But people are paying it, and so I
yeah,
mean, it's
yeah,
these 100 milers are not hurting for more people. If so, they would lower that price, and they're
yeah.
not.
No, I think that's one thing that I don't understand. Like if I look at the bank account after the bank balance after the race is finished, there's no driving around in a sports car. I can tell you, like it's and that's
Yeah.
not the point. Absolutely, the point
Right.
is not. But like we're a little bit spendy relative to other races
Oh,
because
it sounds like it.
yeah, because it costs. That's with everyone gets a free bus ride to the start, so we try and minimize traffic that's out on the course unnecessarily. So all the
Yeah.
distances apart from the half marathon, you take the bus. The longer distances, you've got a GPS tracker. Like it's a high end product.
Yeah. I don't know what other races are doing. I'm trying to get to the point, just because I'm financially minded, to think about like, hey, how much are we spending on average per runner? Like any race
Mhm.
director could easily just take the total number and divide it by the number of runners. But like there's a point at which, like, hey, if you charge $100 and you're spending 20, you're not really giving them enough, in
No,
America,
no.
20 US dollars. But then if you spend 80, it's like, well, can we continue to do this? Because like it's passion, but at the end, and not even a sports car, but can I make my normal car payment? Can I,
Yeah, yeah,
my
exactly.
little Toyota, whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think that's the balance, like, and the way that we offset that, like we want to have a little bit of a lower race entry, and so then you got to bring in sponsors, and hopefully those
Mm,
sponsors are writing not only like providing great atmosphere for bib pickup and finish
mm.
line, but bringing some cash as well. All that matters for the longevity of a race. So are
Yeah,
you working with
absolutely.
any sponsors right now? I know I saw some on your site. Or for this year, do you have sponsors?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of partners with economically, I would say, not really. We've got partners that are on site, people who are helping out a lot of giving good service to the runners, but
Yeah.
it's also trying to keep that sort of level of integrity. There's big business around here that we could potentially contact and almost be guaranteed to get money from, but I don't necessarily
Yeah.
want to take money from the wrong people. Like it has to fit. Like
Absolutely. Yeah.
and that's something that we're keen with. Like we have Hoka as a headline sponsor, and
Yeah.
they've been super nice. And from day one, like as the race was an idea, Hoka in Sweden were on. They wanted to be part of it, which was
Oh, that's cool.
fantastic. Yeah,
That is
absolutely.
nice.
And then we've got some other outdoor brands, a sunglasses brand, and Anders comes down and shoots a portrait of all the finishers, which is
Oh, I
super
love that.
nice.
Yeah, I love that
Yeah.
touch.
So we're working on it, but I would say that that's one of my weaker points, like service minded to a fault
Yes.
almost.
Oh, yes. I mean, in all of my restaurant partnerships, I think you and I represent the average two people that do a restaurant together.
No.
You're in the kitchen, uncompromising about product, and I'm in the back little tiny room. Like, hey, if you're gonna make that product, we have to charge a lot more. And you're like, well, I can't charge that much because I want everyone to be able to try it. And well, if everyone tries it, we're screwed because we're going to be out of money. Uh, but so that's I feel like that's maybe how we would complement each other. But what you're providing for the price, it's like you're providing a premium price. I mean, a premium product at a value price, which I'm sure the runner. I mean, maybe, and if you're saying you're the second most expensive, so I'm placing, I guess, American values and American
Mm-mm.
economics onto you, and I need to probably step back on that. But you're providing something that if you did that here, I mean, you're looking at a satisfy running type prices. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? You're going to be like that. You're talking to 500. If a former Noma chef in charge of what the aid stations, like you market that's a $500 100 miler in America, in my opinion. But
That's
here we
that.
are.
But sometimes it feels like there's a story when New Order released Blue Monday. They got the artist that made the record sleeve. He was so expensive that they lost like £1.50 on every record they sold. But they said like, oh, but it doesn't matter. It's no problem because we won't sell any anyway, and it became the biggest selling vinyl single of all time. Sometimes, like, I'm not sure that
And
we'll be that successful, but it
I
sometimes
missed it.
feels.
Which vinyl did you say that was?
It was Blue Monday, I think, by New Order. I think it was that
Okay.
single. That the
So
artist, the artwork cost so much that they lost money.
so the more they sold, the more money they lost.
Exactly.
I love it.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
tried to. Yeah, scaling up didn't work in that case, but
Yeah.
we're working on it. It's good. It's good fun. It's good fun learning,
Yeah.
and it's certainly fun making a product or producing a race that people are really enjoying, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's one of the more rewarding things. And then on top of that, if you can figure out how to make it your full-time job, if that's your aspiration, then it's just like to have a passion that you're actually executing on year in and year out. What a lucky
Yeah,
life.
absolutely. Absolutely.
So this year, what'd you say, September? Did you say September or October?
September, middle of September. So the 100
That's
miler
right.
starts at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on Friday, the 13th
Oh,
of September.
oh, nice. I love is that a Europe thing on average, like to have an afternoon start for a 100 miler? I know UTMB starts at like 6 p.m.
Yeah,
Is that
quite often
normal?
it starts in the evening. Yeah,
I like that a
generally.
lot.
Yeah. We
As a
tried to
runner, I
do
don't
it.
like the early starts.
No, I think it's difficult. We tried to do it so we would like everybody to finish on the Saturday, so they have a full day of recovery before going to work on the Monday.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then also I didn't have the heart to cut people off at the finish line. So we have our last cut off is you need to be at the final aid station, which is about 4 miles from the end, by midnight on the Saturday, and then we stay open until they get there. So I think it's a 36. Is it 36 or 34 hour
Oh, I love
till
it.
to
Yeah.
reach the final aid station, and then also
Oh,
the 55K. I think they have like 13 hours or something to
nice,
trying to
nice.
get people, because I mean we're there anyway. So if you want to take
Yeah,
all
why not?
day, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love I mean, in America, there's some of the, the races like Western States is the prime example. They have a 30-hour cutoff. I couldn't practically finish that. And
yeah,
that's 17,000 feet of gain and like 23,000 feet of loss. Um, so to hear yours has that cutoff, like that's realistically one that's you're probably going on my bucket list because, that's my time, 36
yeah.
hours.
I think it's nice that people can run and they don't feel the same level of
Yes.
stress. The last
Yeah.
last year
Yes.
we had two women who were running together, and they were like chasing cutoffs all of the day. Um, and then we got a like I called them to check in, like how things were going, and they were like
Mhm.
begged me to, you can send all your aid station workers home. My husband's supporting us in the car, but please, 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 can we finish? It's like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, so because the main issue is that the guys stood at the aid stations don't have to be there on like a 12-hour shift. So long as
Mhm.
those guys could go home, like it was just nice to see these two who finished. They were so happy and so
Yes.
thrilled that they did. Like imagine drawing the rope and telling them that they're not allowed to.
Oh, I
I
know.
couldn't. I'm too
Yeah.
soft. Like there's no way I could
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah. I mean, unless you're like dealing with elites who are like, this is their job. And it's like, yeah, you missed it. So what?
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
done. But these are people, you're saying half of them came from another country, even. These people shelled out a ton of money to get there. I'm with you. I'm staying. Like, you want to keep going? I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. We'll figure out a way. You want to cross still at 42 hours? Like, I'm here for that. Like,
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
that's my favorite type of story, obviously, so that's
yeah.
cool.
That's 42
Well,
hours would be a long day. Some
it would be. It would be. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So as we wind down here, I'm curious about you as a runner. Like what are some of the races that you've run? What are some of the, just that side of you?
I mean, I've been running for over 10 years now. So,
Okay.
and I did my first 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, a friend and I did a charity run across England, the Coast to Coast Path,
Oh,
which is about 200 miles. We did it
okay.
over 7 days, so like a marathon a day. And basically, since then, I've been trying to run a few ultras every
Okay. Okay.
every year. I've had a little bit of an Achilles problem, so I'm finally back after surgery on that last year. So
Oh, whoa.
I have a few races. I've got a 60k up in the north of Sweden on an area called the High Coast, the Höga Kusten, in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So I'm hoping that will be the first like real test of my
Yeah.
injury. But that's another point to point. And then
Nice.
a race in England called Lakeland 100, which is one of the big inspirations of Sörmlands, like this party feel, a really nice
Nice.
vibe. So I'm doing
Where's
the
that
50.
one at in the UK?
That's in the Lake District.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they have 100 miles that is a big loop of the Lake District, and then they have a 50 mile that starts at the halfway point of the 100 miles. And I've done the 100 miler in 2019 and the 50 miler a couple of times, and yeah, I'm eager to get back there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is where you're at now? I was struck 2 years ago. We spent a summer in Copenhagen. That's really where Borderlands was mostly concepted. Was during that summer there. I couldn't believe when the sun sets and the sun rises, and that's very far south of where you are.
Yeah.
Do you have certain times of year are you approaching a time of year where there's no sunset or very little darkness?
We don't get no sunset here, but I guess like now we're in coming up towards the end of May. I guess it gets dark about 10 o'clock in the evening and light again maybe 3.
Yeah.
And yeah, go a couple of hours north and you get no darkness at all, which is wonderful.
Wow.
But then you pay the price in the winter where you get no light at all.
Yeah. What about during the Sörmlands 100? What's the light situation like on that race?
It's
Sunset, sunrise.
it's just the weekend. Is it the weekend before the equinox? So it's
Okay.
It's roughly 12 hours light, 12 hours dark, which is
okay.
pretty nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good time.
And often September's generally a really good month. I mean, you never know. 2 weeks before the race, there came like insane amount of rain, which I was pretty I felt thankful that it wasn't over race weekend. But generally September's a pretty nice. You'd be running between like 10 and 12 degrees centigrade, maybe up to 15, 16 during the day. So it's pretty temperate.
That's nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if you're happen to be in Copenhagen this summer, I'll be there from like July 15th until September 1st, waiting for the Olympics to clear before we move to Paris for the year.
Yeah. Okay.
But we should hang out, or man, I just want to come up and see the course, and maybe I can even come see it during the race. So it's actually in the realm of possibility. I'm just not sure yet. Either way, I'm super
you're more
excited
than welcome.
for you.
It'd be great. It'd be great if you wanted to come up. Absolutely.
Yeah. Did I see? So you have okay. One last bit of information. What are the distances that are the Sörmlands 100? What are all the distances you have?
We've got 100 miles, 100 kilometers, 55 kilometers, a half marathon, and then the kids 2K, which is totally wild when they're and that's super technical. The kids 2K, so they come back. Their knees are torn up. There's tears. There's blood everywhere, and there's laughter, and it's super fun. The kids' race is like the most intense hour of the whole weekend.
I love it. Well, at the very least, I'll come run the kids 2K. That sounds like a blast. Well, Billy, thanks for your time. This is fun.
Thanks ever so much.
I love getting to know your culture, what you're building over there. It's just so different from over here, and I think more of us need to know about it. So thank you.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me on.
All right, take care.
Take care. Bye.